Hello. Before I begin today's chat, I'd love for you to join me in taking a conscious breath. Conscious inhale through the nose and a conscious exhale. So today I want to admit to my heretical beliefs, which go against a lot of beliefs out there, but for those it resonates with, wonderful, and for those it doesn't, then that's okay too. It's nice to stay open to other possibilities and ideas, and just because this is where I've ended up in my understanding of things does not mean it has to be yours. So, even when I was very young, I understood this idea of reincarnation and I did not want to come back. And this was an idea that somebody else had given me. This is not something I inherently came up with on my own as far as I remember. But I just have always been like, there's something wrong with this place. I don't want to come back. And not that I ever went and became a monk, but it's something that I have been studying and exploring and wondering about and fearing and freaking out about is like, how do I get off of this reincarnation cycle? And I hadn't really had an answer. It seemed very complicated. It seemed like you basically had to become enlightened, and that's like kind of hard to do, Even for those of us who are trying really hard to live like clean, aligned, honest lives, enlightenment is not an overnight thing for most of us. So I sort of had this like progressive path towards like, how do I get off the reincarnation cycle? And as I've gone through my own life experiences, my own intense studies, my own inner and outer explorations, I really came to the conclusion, completely on my own, that the reincarnation cycle is this false cycle. That it is essentially like a trickery. It is a trap. It is a manipulation, and that it's not so much that you have to be enlightened to get off of it. It's you have to know what is true. You have to know who you are, and you have to be able to get out of all the contracts that you have entered into that have kept you stuck in this reincarnation cycle. And so maybe that's all enlightenment is knowing what's true, what is, who you are, and having the strength to get out of contracts. Maybe that's all there is. So since then, I've been down like the rabbit hole of the reincarnation trap. I have not come up with this idea. I mean, I came up with it internally in myself, but there's all this information out there that has now appeared. It's so funny. Like I went looking for this for a long time, couldn't find anything. Then when I come to this conclusion on my own, suddenly there's like books and videos and like a whole ideologies that I never come across. This reality is really funny, isn't it? So, for those of us who have decided that we do not want to reincarnate under any circumstances, and who do believe that reincarnation is real, so it's not so much that I don't believe that it's real, it's just that I believe it's real and don't want to do it. Here's what I have come to understand is like some of the keys to exiting. And this is why I think I am so fascinated with law right now and why the Sovereign's Way Law for Mankind knowledge share has been so transformative for me because it's sort of given me these like final key pieces as far as a direction of like this is what I need to know to get out of reincarnation. So one of the occult sayings is as above so below, and I do tend to agree with that. So to me, everything we're witnessing here is some version of what's above. And to me, what is above is the next layer, whatever happens after we die, that we then need to navigate, that's either going to get us out and through. I believe that there's a whole different reality outside of this one. I don't know what it is. I don't claim to know what it is, but I want to go there. I believe it's home, whatever that is for you. I have a sense of what it is for me. Or we're going to come back. We're going to keep doing this cycle over and over and over for infinity. So learning about law has been so powerful for me because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what's been missing from my understanding of how to actually be empowered at the time of death to know how to exit. Ah, so exciting to at least have a path forward. So, some of the things that I feel like are so vital to exit, and this is what I got from the Law for Mankind course, was first really getting clear of the difference between reality and fiction. And I had already been on this path to some extent, but for some reason the course really solidified it for me. It really helped me understand reality from fiction in a completely different way that continues to broaden and expand. And so to me, if a person, if I cannot distinguish reality from fiction, if I am convinced that a fiction is reality, then I am not going to have the sovereignty and the ability, whatever happens after death, to know what is real and what is true, and therefore make a decision based on it. So, one of the practices that I find to be really important in this is not just my everyday life of staying in reality, staying what is true, not contracting with false realities, as I've talked about in a previous video. Like every time we agree to a false reality, we've contracted with it. So, it's staying in this reality with what is true, but also with staying in what is real and what is true in altered states. So whether this is in astral travel, whether this is in our dream state, most of us do not know that we're even dreaming, right? So we don't even know who we are, where we are, what we're doing. We just take for granted that what we see, this is real, this is true. And so for me, the practice of reality is necessary to escape to exit this reincarnation matrix. And one of the ways that I find most beneficial is practicing reality in your everyday life. And that's like practicing with law. It's understanding that the titles that we take on are fictitious. They are not real, right? Like I can use the title of something like, patient or student or, tenant. I can use these titles, but they're not real and they're not who I actually am. So, coming into the true awareness of who you are, what is real, what is really happening around you, this is so necessary. And that's why I loved the course that I took, The Sovereign's Way, because it just really helped me take a deeper step into it, into this distinguishing reality from fiction, because I really believe that is going to be vitally important at the time of death. If you do not know who you are, where you are, and what is going on, and what authority you have versus somebody else over your path, then I don't believe that you can require that you're leaving the reincarnation cycle. So, the second thing I find so important in understanding law to understand how to exit reincarnation is this whole thing of contracts. And I already did a whole video on contracts, but basically, one of the things I've come to believe based on a lot of experiences, and I'm just going to preface this, I used to professionally do Akashic Records readings. I have been in the Akashic Records for many countless hours for myself and for others. And I have very much seen past lives. I have very much seen soul contracts, and I believe they exist. However, I've come to believe that almost all of them were manipulated, created under duress, created under false promises and false guilt. So, understanding contracts in this realm and becoming aware of how we enter into contracts here and what we do and don't have to contract with, again, that's law. So understanding it simply in this realm, I believe, will help us in whatever comes next. Because if you've studied NDEs, near-death experiences, there are a lot of repeated themes. And I don't believe that all of us are going to have the same experience after death. So I don't think we can specifically prepare for this one circumstance or this one circumstance, but sort of thematically, what seems to come up is this idea of, oh, you need to go back because you need to learn this lesson. You need to learn this thing. You need to clean this up. And that's a contract. And so if you know who you are and what is true, you can determine if you actually need to do that, if that's actually going to become your law. And I can't speak for anybody else, but based on my own understanding right now of reality, of karma, of right and wrong, of the way all of this works, we we as a soul don't need to learn anything. Our soul is perfect and pure and true, and all the good things. There's nothing to learn. It's already whole and complete. So if you're being convinced that you have to come back to learn something or to right a wrong that your avatar body may have done or your avatar mind may have done, then you don't know who you are. So you're basically being convinced to enter into a contract because you don't know who you are. So going back to fiction versus reality, then coming back to contracts and really knowing how to think about, how to negotiate, how to say yes or no to a contract. So, most of us can't even really navigate the physical and intangible contracts of this realm. If we don't have that skill, I don't believe that we can like easily navigate the higher level, way trickier contracts that whatever beings or entities run, whatever archons run this reincarnation cycle, whatever they have mastered in convincing people to enter into contracts or convincing souls. So when people say, oh, well, I have a contract with this person or that person, or I have a soul contract for this, I don't think they're necessarily wrong. I just don't believe they entered into it consciously and of their own volition. I think it was like hugely manipulated. And so coming into an understanding of contracts in this realm, I think is really important. And again, that's something that the Law for Mankind course really helped me do. Even as somebody who's thought about contracts before, who took a whole, college course on contracts, I came into a newer, deeper, higher, deeper and higher level understanding of contracts through that course. So the next thing I think is like really, really, really vital is being able to stand in your power against authority or with authority, not against. This doesn't have to be against. Being able to stand in your power with authority. So most of us have some fear of authority, some of us more than others. I actually have a lot of fear of authority that I didn't even know I had until I kind of got deeper into this path I'm in right now. And it's something I'm like actively working to break. And what's become really clear to me is that I can be very centered and very sure in myself and totally stand up for what is right and true as long as I'm not being threatened, as long as there's no coercion, as long as I don't feel physically unsafe. And those are totally legitimate reasons to back down. But, in my understanding of what happens after death, like we only get one chance, and it doesn't matter how afraid, how unsure, how small you might feel, you need to know how to stand up to authority and that there really is no authority. And that's really that's the whole secret right there, right? There is no authority. But we need to come to understand that and to be able to stand up to and say no to anyone or any being or anything which is trying to be an authority over us. So unless we have agreed that this being or this entity can be an authority, it can't be, right? So one of the things that has really started happening in my life, which I kind of find hilarious and terrifying, is ever since I took the Sovereign's Way course, I have had all these controversies with authority, like things that have never happened in my entire life have suddenly started popping up. And at first I was like, oh my God, what is happening here? And I really realized it's because I need some practice. I have no idea how to remain in reality and remain centered in myself and sure of what is true and not acquiesce to authority because I never practiced it that much. Maybe I had a boss or maybe I had a parent or something, but when it gets into these bigger realms, like when it's dealing with a man or a woman who likes to call themselves police officer, or, a man who wants to call himself judge, I had no idea how scared I was of that. So I'm actually kind of not enjoying, but sort of thrilled that I've gotten some new and interesting opportunities to face authority and face my fears of it. Because as long as we believe in authority, even if it's a tiny little piece of myself, I'm a total anarchist. I don't actually believe in authority, so I claim. But when somebody who aggressively insists they're an authority comes into my life, when a man wearing a black dress, calling himself judge, comes into my orbit, I have a whole different energy that came online that I was really surprised about like really submissive and backing down. So it showed me that I had a lot of work that I needed to do in myself. So to me, unless we can confront our fear of authority, and this is the perfect ground to do it, this is the life that we get to practice this with, right? Then how can we possibly expect that we're going to be able to stand up to something way bigger and scarier, or whatever's on the other side of this, like the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, like the archons? Like, I don't know who or what is on the other side of this life, but I guarantee it's scarier than a police officer or a judge or a soldier or your mother, or whatever authority figure you're actually scared of. So that's really important in my view, and that's part of why I think it's really interesting that the Sovereign's Way course kind of gave me all these pieces, which is fiction versus reality, understanding contracts, and really getting clear about sovereignty and authority. And that those are what has been missing in my understanding and practices of how to exit reincarnation. So the final thing I want to say, just because I want to share it, I want it to be out there, is there's a lot of information about what to do after death to try to exit reincarnation. I don't claim to know what's true. I have no idea. But what I will say is, in my own explorations, my own like deep explorations into this inside myself. I have read and watched tons of things around this, but I've really gone inside for a lot of this. When I first heard about the holes in the grid, because that's one of the ways that is commonly talked about to exit reincarnation, is that supposedly, apparently, when you die, you can look around and search for holes in the grid of like this matrix construct, like whatever it is that we're in, and exit through that. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go find these holes. I started to do some astral travel, like where are the holes? And when I was doing astral travel, I will say I did find a lot of holes. They were actually everywhere. It's like, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. And then I got this very clear message that no. The hole in the grid that you exit through is not any of these things. As with everything in this whole realm, to not look outside of yourself. The answer is never outside. The hole in the grid is never outside. The hole in the grid to exit the reincarnation is in your heart. It's in you. You go inside to exit. And that just made so much sense to me. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I never thought of that. So this is the most important portal, the most important place, the most important realm you have is your heart. And I actually believe that that's why the powers that want to be, the powers that think they should be, why this whole construct in Earth, or this whole construct in realm, and everything physically and energetically seems to be fighting so hard to break your heart, to close your heart, to disconnect you from your heart, because this is the most powerful, potent tool that any of us have, and that it's not anything that we have to find. It's not anything we have to go looking for. It can't even be given to us. This is something that we inherently have. And that's so powerful, but it's so scary to those who want to control us, right? Because if we all knew that we like literally had the ability to not only access, infinite energy, infinite source, infinite gnosis, infinite knowing, but we also have the ability to exit reincarnation just by going deep into our heart at the time of death. Wow. I mean, of course they want to block that off. So understanding heart practices has been really important to me, like forgiveness. Oh man, I really believe we have to clean our heart out. We have to come into true humbleness, true forgiveness, true spaces of love. And I don't mean like toxic love or like toxic, allowing abusive behavior, but like a deep understanding of what love actually is. And that's here in the heart. So I would say all the law stuff I mentioned is wonderful. And if that resonates, yay. And if not, work on your heart, come into your heart, feel your heart, clean your heart out. This is the place that's ultimately going to be the most important, because the way I see it right now, subject to change, is if, say when I die and I go wherever I go and I'm in front of a tribunal or I'm facing all of my dead relatives or, whatever scenario you might hear about, even if I have absolute sovereignty, even if I know fact from fiction, even if I, you know, uh, don't create any contracts, if I don't know where to go from there, that's not going to help me. So to me, I know where to go. I go inside. I pull myself into my heart, into this portal, and I have no idea what's on the other side. But based on the time I've spent in here, it's definitely where I want to go. So I would love to hear if you have any other things that you feel are like vitally important for exiting reincarnation for those who want to. And for those who don't, if you want to come back, good for you. And if you don't believe in reincarnation, good for you. And if you don't believe that it's a trap, good for you. That's okay. This is not to convince anyone. This is simply for those who might be looking for some answers, as I have spent so much time doing and I'm still doing because I learn new things in here all the time.